Okay, so I am Parthasarathi Purkastha, PSP बुला लो चलेगा, and I will be trying to help you in the physics section of BitSat. ठीक है? Now, first of all, I will be spending like 10-15 minutes to give you a basic intro to the ideas or the basic concepts that we'll be using in this section, and then I will try my best to make you understand and solve the paper. Fine. The thing is that I might go a little bit fast at first, or it might not seem like I'm not going a little bit slow, because this is the pace that BitSat demands. First few times thoda weird लगेगा, like it might appear to be very fast, or you may not like it. Hopefully since टेस्ट सीरीज आ रही है, ऋषभ भाई ने कहा है, तो अगर मतलब you follow us for the next 3-4 videos as well, like वो टेस्ट सीरीज होगा शायद. So if you follow us in the next few videos as well, hopefully तुम्हें मेरा स्टाइल अच्छा लग जाएगा, एंड होपफुली यू विल पिक अप द पेस एज वेल. सो वो प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगी. फॉर नाउ इफ़ यू हैव एनी डिफिकल्टीज, ट्राई रिवाइंडिंग, ट्राई गोइंग थ्रू द कंसेप्ट्स ओवर एंड ओवर अगेन. एंड आई गेस वी हैव अ टेलीग्राम ग्रुप एज वेल. डाउट वहाँ पे पूछ लो, और इन द कमेंट्स में आप पूछ सकते हो डाउट्स. आई विल ट्राई माई बेस्ट टू हेल्प यू आउट देयर. ठीक है? सो आई गेस वी शुड गेट स्टार्टेड नाउ. चलो. Okay, so before we start solving this paper, there are a few basic concepts you're supposed to be knowing. Now, this is just going to be a run through where I just tell you the basic concepts you should be knowing. Like, I won't be going in depth here, okay? So let's get started. Fine. The first thing we're supposed to be knowing is Stephen's law. In that, we are basically given this. Now, yeah. So in Stephen's law, yeah, fine. So in Stephen's law, we can say that the power dissipated, or the rate of change of energy, is given by sigma E8 e to the power 4. Sigma is Stephen's constant, given by this value, 5.67 10 to the power minus 8 watt per meter squared Kelvin. E is emissivity of the body. For a black body, it's 1. A and T are areas and temperature of the radiating surfaces. Okay? Next, we have Doppler effect. In Doppler effect, suppose we have the source and observer such that they're both moving in the positive x direction. Positive x direction. Okay? So in that case, this and the frequency of emission is suppose nu, and the frequency received by the observer is mu dash, then it's given by this formula. Okay? Mu dash is given by mu into v minus v naught by v minus vs. Okay? Now, if this velocity, if this observer is moving in the opposite direction, suppose this is v naught, in that case we can apply this minus sign here, and same thing in this case as well. Fine. So that's about Doppler effect. Next, projectile motion. This is for projectile motion. Suppose the body is moving in the upward direction, like a vertical projectile, suppose. So in that case, the total time of flight is given by t equals to twice u by g, and the maximum height achieved is u square by twice g. Projectile motion is nothing but basically a combination of two motions: one vertical motion where the velocity is u sin theta, and a horizontal motion where the velocity is u cos theta. Fine. Now again, instead of in case of projectile, instead of just twice u by g, we will have twice u sin theta and sin theta here as well. Like we can just substitute it to get these formulas. And next, range. Range refers to the total distance covered in the horizontal direction throughout the time of flight. So that is given by u cos theta into t, which is given by this. Like just substitute it all together. Fine, and we'll be getting this formula. Next, suppose there is a lens and we have white light passing through it. Clearly, there will be dispersion occurring, because of which the light will get scattered into its constituent components. Okay? So violet will basically be at the, will get most deviated, or will bend the most, and red will bend the least. So yeah, that's why the refractive index of the material with respect to different colors will be different. Now, if with respect to red is mu r, and with respect to v is mu v, and with respect to yellow, the middle one, let it be mu y. In that case, the dispersive power is given by this formula, or you could actually write it as in terms of focal length as this, where Fy is given by root over Fr into Fe. Fine. Next, in properties of solid, there's a basic formula that be it length, be it area, be it volume, they are both given. All of them are given in this same context, where for length it is alpha, for area it is beta, and for volume it's gamma. Okay, for a uniform body. Now, the same thing can be applied to resistance and resistivity as well, where this is the coefficient of increase in resistance change with respect to temperature. Next, we have this is the formula for magnetic Lorentz force that is experienced by a body, a charged body actually, when it moves in a magnetic field at a particular direction. Fine. Now, suppose this is the magnetic field, and a body having charge q, mass m, and velocity v enters this field, normal to it, suppose. So in that case, the magnetic Lorentz force will be qvb, fine, because sine theta is 90, and this force will give the centripetal force for it to perform the circular motion. So it can be written as mv square by r, and from there we get this expression. Now at the same time, we can use this to get the time period of oscillation as well, time period of circular motion as well. Now time period is given by twice pi r by v. Just substitute this one here, and we'll be getting this equation. Again, now if you're talking about electrostatics, the electric field can be written as minus dv by dr, stating that electric field is directed along that direction where potential decreases the steepest. Fine. Now momentum can be written as root over twice mk, where k is kinetic energy. Now instead of k you could write ev as well. It's the same thing, okay? So you could actually substitute it this way as well. Now this is your de Broglie wavelength. Lambda is given by h by p, where p can be substituted, this value can be put in there, and we can basically get an expression like this. Now for a specific type of particle like electron or proton, suppose we can basically plug in the values here, and for electrons we have this. Lambda is directly given as 1.23 by root v nanometers, and for protons we have directly lambda is given by 28.6 by root v picometers. Fine. Now suppose we have a body that is submerged underwater. Fine. Now if not exact submerged, it's basically floating on any fluid with a fraction of it submerged in it. Now what fraction is submerged? For that we could directly use this, that if n is the fraction of the body submerged, then we could directly write this expression, from where we can get that the fraction submerged given by sigma by rho, where sigma is density of the body and rho of the fluid. So if they're asked what fraction is exposed outwards, just we'll have to calculate 1 minus n. Now if we talk about magnetic flux, it is given by B dot A, where B is magnetic field and A is area through which the field passes. Okay? Now where B dot A is given by BA cos theta, where theta is the angle that the area vector makes with the magnetic field. Fine. Now if we do d phi by dt, we'll be getting the potential difference, or the EMF, will basically be getting that along with the minus sign. This is Faraday's law, while the minus sign is Lenz's law. Fine. Now if you're talking about radioactive decay, those are first order exponential decay reactions. So they are characterized by this equation, and on solving it we get n or r equals n naught into e to the power minus lambda t, where lambda is the rate constant or decay constant. Now here the half-life, or t half, is given by ln2 by lambda, or 0.693 by lambda, and the mean life is given by 1 by lambda. Again, in case of suppose we have a magnetic field B, in which we have any loop, say of area A and n number of turns, and current I, it will experience a torque that is given by this expression Ni A cross B, or Niva sin theta. Okay? Now if you are talking about capacitors, for a capacitor, capacitance is given by C equals to epsilon naught A by D without any dielectrics. Now if a dielectric, suppose this is D, and suppose thickness T, we apply a dielectric, in that case C becomes epsilon naught A divided by D minus T plus D by K. So if we fill the entire space of the capacitor with this dielectric, in that case T becomes equal to D. So if we substitute here, we get K into epsilon naught A by D. Okay, now suppose we have a current carrying wire of finite length. So in that case, if we want to determine the magnetic field at a particular point, right? Just a minute. Now this is not a very good diagram. I'll have to explain this again. Yeah. Okay. Now suppose this is a wire of finite length carrying current I, and we wish to calculate the field at a point B. This angle is theta 1, this angle is theta 2. In that case, we can write this B is given by mu naught I by 4 pi D sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2. This is the field at that point. Now the direction can be given by the right hand curl rule, you could say. So just along the thumb current, basically just align your thumb along the direction of current, and the direction along which the four fingers curl is the direction of the magnetic field. So here it's coming out of the board. So out of the plane of the paper is basically the direction of the magnetic field, and its magnitude is given by this. If it is infinitely long wire, in that case, this theta 1 will tend, if it's infinitely long, then theta 1 and theta 2 both will tend to 90 degrees. So in that case, we will get mu naught I divided by twice by d, where this is d. Fine. So this is an expression that we should be knowing. At the same time, this was for theta 1 and theta 2. Had this length, like if we were finding from at this point, so in that case theta 1 is fine, theta 2 is fine, but theta 1 was supposed to be in the left direction, but it has gone to the right. So whatever theta 1 it may be, just substitute as minus theta 1. So that will basically be our formula here. Now yeah, suppose we have a string in which we have a wave propagating. So the velocity of the wave is given by v equals to root over t by mu, where t is tension in the string and mu is linear mass density, that is mass by length. Fine. Now suppose we consider omega. Omega is given by twice by nu, and k, propagation constant, is given by twice pi by lambda. V equals to nu lambda, so 1 by lambda can be written as v by nu. So substituting it here, we can get that k equals to omega by v, or omega equals to kv. Next, suppose we consider a drop and a bubble. Fine. So now, in case of a bubble, there is only one surface area A given by 4 pi r squared. Sorry, drop. In case of a drop. In case of bubble, there are two surfaces, like 1 and 2. So the area will become twice of it, where A is given by 4 pi r squared. So U will be 8 pi r squared. Fine. Now for a drop, the excess pressure inside is given by 2t by r, while for a bubble it will be just double of it, so 4t by r. Surface energy of a drop is given by 4 pi r squared into t, while for a bubble it will just be double of it, 8 pi r squared into t. Next we have this topic of wave optics, where we are going to talking about interference. Fine. Okay, so now constructive interference, destructive interference, in depth I'm not going to go right now. I'm just going to say this one, that suppose we have two sources, each having intensity I naught. In that case, if there is a part difference of lambda, suppose d lambda, or a phase difference of phi corresponding to it, in that case the intensity at that point observed is given by 4 I naught into cos squared phi by 2. Fine. Where we can relate part difference and phase difference by this equation, d phi by dx, where d phi is phase difference, dx is part difference, is given by twice pi by lambda. And suppose we want to find the position of nth maxima, then x is given by n lambda d by d, and suppose we are talking about nth minima, it is given by this, twice n plus 1 lambda d by twice d. And again, lambda is wavelength, n is the number of maxima minima. Positive or negative sign will just give us whether it's going to be above or below the x-axis. Fine, the horizontal plane or level of central maxima or central bright fringe. Anyway, d is the separation between the source and the screen, while small d is the slit width, not slit width, separation between the slits. Right. So yeah, these are the basic stuff that we are supposed to be knowing right now. Yeah, so let's get started with solving the paper now. Great. Now that we know the basics, let's get started. Okay. First thing to notice is that there are going to be 150 questions in all. 40 in chemistry, 40 in physics, 40 chemistry, 15 each of these, and 40 again here. Fine. So generally in mathematics we find such little bit confusing and difficult questions. So just for those, like we will try our best to save extra time for the mathematics section, and if possible to attempt all and spare some more time for the bonus section. Fine. So ideally we're supposed to attempt physics in less than an hour, and since physics is generally easy, preferably 40-45 minutes. Fine. So yeah, while keeping this in mind, let's get started. First question: if temperature of a black body increases from 300 Kelvin to 900 Kelvin, then the rate of energy radiation increases by? Well, as per Stephen's law, the rate of energy or power is given by sigma EA t to the power 4, right? So power is directly proportional to t to the power 4. So if we increase here, the temperature is increased 3 times. So if we increase it 3 times, it's going to also be 3 into t to the power 4, so 81 t to the power 4. So P dash becomes 81 times of the original value. Fine. or you could actually do it in a different way as well, like P2 is directly proportional to e to the power 4, so sorry, P, so P2 by P1 will be T2 by T1 to the power 4, that is again 900 by 300 to the power 4, which is 81. So either way you will be getting this value. The method that I showed was that since it's directly proportional to e to the power 4, if you increase it 3 times, the new power will be 3 to the power 4 times, that is 81 times. So try doing that in one line, it will be much easier and better as well. Next, a whistle of frequency 500 Hz tied to the end of a string of length 1.2 meter revolves at 400 revolutions per minute. A listener standing some distance away in the plane of rotation of whistle hears frequencies in the range. Okay, now as per Doppler's effect, this source, let us assume that this is the source, it is rotating in this circle, and there is an observer here. Now, when this source has a velocity in this direction, that is tangential, and something like this, velocity of sound will always be towards the observer, but the velocity of the source will in one case be towards and one case be away from. This will be maximum frequency and this will be the velocity for the position for minimum frequency. Fine. So we want to find the range for this. Now as for Doppler's effect, velocity is the nu dash observed is given by nu into v minus vo by v minus vs. Since here observer is at rest, it will be v by this. Fine. When it is going towards, it will be written as v minus vs. When it is going away from it, it will be written as v plus vs. Fine. So we have nu, we have v, we just need to find vs here. Now, in this circular path, vs can be written as r omega, right? Because omega equals to v by r. So r here is 1.2 meters and omega here is 400 revolutions per minute, right? 400 rev per minute. Now we have to convert in SI. So 400 into 2 pi, since 1 rev will mean 2 pi rad. So 400 to 2 pi rad in 60 seconds. So this will give us rad per second. If you plug this value in here, we will get mu dash values to go from the range of 436 to 586 Hertz. So accordingly, that will be our option D. Next, the focal length of a thin convex lens for red and blue rays are 100 centimeter and 96.8 centimeters respectively. Then the dispersive power of the material of the lens. Now when I discussed this in the intro session, I already gave this formula. The dispersive power is given by Fr minus Fv divided by Fy, or in terms of mu also you could actually represent it, but in this case since focal length is given, we'll go for it, where Fy is given by root over Fr into Fv. Fine. So all we have to do is just plug it in right now. So I guess Fr is given to be 100 here. Yeah. So 100 minus 96.8 divided by root over 100 into 96.8. Now on solving this, just a minute. Okay. Wait a minute. 100 minus 96 divided by root over 100 into 96.8. So it's going to give something around 0.0325. So it's going to be option C. Fine. Next. These are just direct formulas. I already discussed them in the intro session. You just have to plug them in. Fine. Now, question number 4. Two metal plates have a potential difference of 800 volts and are 2 centimeter apart. It is found that a particle of mass 1.96 10 to the power minus 15 kg remains suspended in the region between the plates. The charge on the particle must be. Fine. So these are two metal plates, potential difference of 800 volts and spacing of I guess 2 centimeters, right? Yeah. There is a mass here of mass m, let us assume, and charge q. I think we'll have to, we have to find this charge q. Fine. Now there will be an mg in the downward direction and there will be a force QE in the upward direction. Fine. Now since we just need the magnitude, all we have to do is just equate these forces. QE must be equal to mg, Q must be equal to mg by E, where E is electric field, value of the electric field. Now earlier I said E equals to minus dV by dr. Now since we are interested only in the magnitude, all we have to do is just calculate the difference. Difference is 800 volts divided by 2 by 100 2 centimeters is 2 by 100 meters. Fine. So we have the mass, we have the G, and we also have the E. Fine. But the thing is, we want the answer in terms of 3E, 8E or something of that sort. Fine. So here the small e is nothing but charge of an electron, which is 1.6 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, right? So suppose we want the answer to be in terms of Ne. So we can just plug, instead of Q, we could just write it as Ne. So Ne equals to mg by E. Fine. N equals to mg by E
E. We have M, we have G, we have E, we have this capital E as well. If you plug in the values, we get the value of n to be 3. Therefore, our answer is 3E. Fine. It's really that simple. So you see what we are doing here is that this is how we are supposed to attempt the paper actually. Like the thing is, we already know the formula, we already know the concepts, we just need to know how to apply it. And since BitSat is a test of speed and accuracy both, so we will have to try our best to minimize the time taken to solve the questions, right? So if you know the formula, like the questions are direct, straightforward. You know the formula, plug it in, and you will get the answer directly. Fine. So that's exactly what we're doing, and I'm trying to just inculcate this habit so that it helps us later on. Fine. I'll be rushing a bit through this because this is the speed you should try to pick up, because then you can assure yourself that you will be getting some kind of a great score in BitSat. So try your best to keep it up, and you may face a few difficulties here. So check out my intro session for the like formula thing again, and rewatch this part, the way whatever parts you get confused in. Fine, just for better clarity. And whenever you get a formula, try to find out similar questions and experiment with it. Like when can you directly apply it, when can you tweak it a little bit, like just make it a tool, use it whenever you can, because that's what we're trying to achieve in BitSat. Like with minimal amount of effort, we are supposed to solve maximum amount of questions. So for that and yeah, that too in a very short amount of time. So we are basically trying to achieve that right now. Fine. So question number 5: at what angle theta to the horizontal should an object be projected so the maximum height reached is equal to its horizontal range? What is maximum height reached? U squared sine squared theta by twice g if projection angle is theta. What is range? Twice u squared sine theta cos theta by g. Already discussed this earlier. Fine. They're saying that it should be equal. So in that case, u squared sine squared theta by 2g must be equal to twice u squared sine theta cos theta by g. Cancel everything out. Sine theta as well. So we are gonna get sine theta equals to 4 cos theta, or tan theta equals to 4. So theta equals to tan inverse 4, direct. No need to waste time here at all. Next, question 6. A body of mass 1 kg is executing SHM. Its displacement in centimeters is given by this. Its maximum kinetic energy is. For maximum kinetic energy, we will be requiring the maximum velocity at first, right? So for maximum velocity, suppose we have an equation given like this, that y equals to a sine omega t. Y dot will give us a omega cos omega t. This is the velocity. A omega is the Vmax in this case. If you're talking about y max possible is a here, because sine omega t or cos omega t can have the maximum value of 1. Like I'm talking about magnitude, right? Great. So that's all we are supposed to be doing here. So y is 6 sine 100t plus pi by 4. On differentiating it, we'll get the velocity, which is given by a 600 cos 100t plus pi by 4. So maximum velocity is 600 centimeters per second, or 6 meter per second. So maximum kinetic energy is half m Vmax squared, right? Vmax is 6, m is 1. If you plug it in, we directly get 18 joules. So that's your answer, B. Fine. Great. Now let's get to question number 7. Fine. Now a positive charge q is projected in magnetic field of width mv by root over 2 square root 2 qb, fine, with velocity v. Then the time taken by charged particle to emerge from the magnetic field. Okay, now radius is going to be mv by qv. So the width is 1 by root 2 times of that. Like, so let us assume this is the field and it's projected as such. It will not be able to complete the whole thing, because before that, since the width is less than the radius, width is somewhat like 1 by root 2 times of radius, fine. So you will not be able to complete the circle, rather you will exit it along this tangential direction. So the question is time taken to emerge, right? Fine. So let us assume that this was the original circle, and assuming this is the center, this is r, and this is the width. Width is given to be r by root 2. Since this is perpendicular and this is r, this length should also be r by root 2, which means this should be pi by 4. If this is pi by 4, this total arc, time period taken for covering this total arc, would be the fraction that pi by 4 is of 2 pi. So the fraction is pi by 4 divided by 2 pi, which is 1 by 8, right? 1/8 of the total circle. So the time taken would be like t dash 1/8 of the total time period. The total time period is written by twice pi m divided by qb, and here 1/8. So pi m by 4 qb. So option B. Fine. So that's it. Now question number 8. In Young's double slit experiment, the slits are 2 mm apart and are illuminated by photons of two wavelengths, lambda 1 and lambda 2. At what minimum distance from central bright fringe will on the screen 2 meter from the slit will a bright fringe from one interference pattern coincide with a bright fringe from the other? So let us consider like just above the central axis. Let us assume at a distance like for lambda 1, let us assume it will be n1th maxima, and for lambda 2 let us assume it will be n2th maxima. So x equals to n lambda d by d, right? So since they should coincide, x1 must be equal to x2, so n1 lambda 1 must be equal to n2 lambda 2. So n1 by n2 must be lambda 2 by lambda 1. What is lambda 2? So let us go the other way around. n2 by n1, just for easy calculation, is going to be lambda 1 by lambda 2, which is 12 by 10, which is 6 by 5. Fine. Which means that 6th maxima of the second one, right? So what we want is the distance. So what we did was we are trying to find the number of maxima which will coincide. For the second one, it is the 6th maxima. So we just need to find that distance. Isn't that what's asked? That minimum distance is asked. So since minimum distance is asked, we'll have to take the minimum ratio possible in terms of whole numbers, which is 6 by 5 here. So clearly n2 must be equal to 6. So if we take 6, so x is given by n lambda d by d, right? So 6 is for n2, right? So 6 into lambda 2 d by d, and if you plug it in, we will directly get the value coming out to be 6 millimeters. So that's our answer. Fine. Next, two blocks A and B are placed one over the other on a smooth horizontal surface. The maximum horizontal force that can be applied on lower block so that A and B move without separation. Fine. So if A and B move without separation, this means that both should have the same acceleration. So what else has friction? Smooth horizontal surface. Fine. So friction only exists between them. Fine. Here there is no friction occurring. In this bottom region there is no friction occurring. So that means the only frictional force will be occurring here. On B it will be acting in this direction, on A it will be acting in this direction. Fine. So this force max possible is going to be mu into m into g, where m is mass of B. So 3 mu g. Fine. And it is going to be the force that provides the necessary acceleration. So 3 into A. Fine. So mu g can be written as A, or mu can be written as A by g. Now the thing is, we'll have to find A. Here the force is 49 Newton. So acceleration can be given as force by m, mass. Force is 49 Newton and the net mass is 10. So it is 4.9, sorry. So if you plug it in here, 4.9 divided by g is 9.8, we get 1 by 2 or 0.5. So that's our direct answer. Fine. Next. An aeroplane is flying in a horizontal direction with a velocity u and at a height of 2000 meters. When it is vertically below a point A on the ground, a food packet is released from it. The packet strikes the ground at point B. If A equals to 3 km and g equals to 10 meter per second square, then the value of u is. Fine. So this is the point A, suppose, just above it. Height is 2000 meters and velocity is u, right? So if you release it, it strikes the ground at a point B. Okay. Okay, AB is 3 kilometers or 3000 meters, right? Right. So now what do we want? We want to find the value of u. Okay, great. Now, let us assume the time of flight is t. Fine. So in that case, ut must be equal to 3000. So t must be equal to 3000 by u. Fine. At the same time, in time t, the vertical distance covered is going to be 2000 meters, right? So the distance is given by, the time taken is given by root over 2gh for a vertical fall, and since it is dropped, initially u was 0. Now this is given to be the same as 3000 by u. So 3000 by u equals to 2gh, like squared, fine. So 3000 into 3000 by u squared equals to 2gh. Okay. Now g is given to be 10, so we could write it like this, and we could bring u squared here, and we could put 20h here. H is given to be 2000 meters, so we could plug it in here as well. So we have 9000 divided by 40. It can be written as 900 by 4 equals to u squared. So u can be written as 30 by 2 or 15 in terms of meter per second, fine. And now all we have to do is use the conversion factor for kilometers per second. So it can be written as u into 18 by 5, which is 54 kilometer per hour. So that's your answer, direct, fine. Now I hope you get it. This is basic simple equations of motion, fine. You just have to plug in the formulas and you'll get the answers directly. There is not much to ponder upon here. Now, a conducting circular loop is placed in a uniform magnetic field B equals to 0.025 Tesla with its plane perpendicular to the loop. The radius of the loop is made to shrink at a constant rate. Induced EMF is, fine. So EMF can be written as minus d phi b by dt. I already said this. And phi b can be written as b dot a, which in this case is b is 1 by 40. A is okay, pi r squared, let us assume it to be, since radius is variable. And cos theta will be 0 since its plane is perpendicular to the loop, fine. So this is pi r squared. So d phi by dt will be written as pi by 20 r dr by dt, and in terms of minus, this is going to be your induced EMF, fine. Dr by dt is said to be minus 1 millimeter. So this becomes 1 and 10 to the power minus 3 per second. And radius is given to be 2 centimeters. So 2 divided by 100. So we'll be getting something like pi into 10 to the power minus 6 volts. Is there an option? Pi microvolts. So option should be B. Fine. Yeah, there is one thing that's important. We should know what the orders stand for. Like 10 to the power minus 6 is micro, minus 3 is milli, minus 9 is nano, minus 10 is angstrom. So this is a little bit important. Similarly, 10 to the power 3 is kilo, power 6 will be mega, power 9 will be giga, power 12 will be tera. So this basic, I guess, chemistry first chapter or physics first chapter, fine, class 11. So just take that through because it's basic terminology and you need to be aware of it, fine. Great. Now question 12. A mild steel wire of length 2L and cross-sectional area A is stretched well within the elastic limit horizontally between the pillars shown in figure. Mass M is suspended from the midpoint of the wire. Strain in the wire is, okay, fine. So let us consider its strain basically means change in length by original length, right? Its original length was twice L, initial twice L. Length final will be given by twice of this value, and since this is x and this is L, using Pythagoras theorem we can write it like this, fine. Now all we need is the strain. So change in length is 2 root over x squared plus L squared minus twice L divided by original length. This can be written as x squared by L squared plus 1 to the power half minus 1. Okay. Now we will have to use binomial approximation. Since the answers are directly in terms of x and L, we'll have to assume that x is much less than L. So we will have to use binomial approximation. Now suppose we have 1 plus x to the power n. In binomial approximation we can write it like this, x squared and so on, right? Since this term mod is less than 1, in fact it's much less than 1, so the higher powers can be ignored. So we can just write it as this. So here if you open it, 1 plus x squared by L squared to the power half, it can be written as 1 plus x squared by twice L squared. And if you plug this minus 1 here, x squared by twice L squared. This is our required strain, fine. So yeah, these are some basic mathematical things that we're just supposed to be knowing and using them as and when required as per convenience. Now notice how here it was not mentioned x is much less than L. Just like depending on the options, we'll have to understand what approximations are required. Like
Of course, it's in root or something of that sort. So clearly it cannot come out unless we do the binomial approximation. So it's an understanding, like whenever you're getting some complex number but the answer is something really simple, binomial approximation, right? Now, question 13. The resistance of a wire at 20 degrees centigrade is this much, 500 is this much. What temperature will it be? This. Fine. So just directly apply this formula. R equals to R naught 1 plus alpha delta T. For this first case, and delta T is, we are going to refer to it as increase in temperature, considering this as our base. So first case we could write like this: 60 equals to 20 into 1 plus alpha delta T. 500 minus 20, which is 480. So 3 minus 1, 2 by 480. So 1 by 240. That is going to be our alpha. And try to do a few calculations mentally just to increase your speed. Fine. At what temperature its resistance will be 25? Now 25 equals to R naught is again 20, 1 plus alpha delta T. So 25 by 20 minus 1 divided by alpha equals delta T, right? So alpha can be written as 1 by 240. So you could cancel it and write as 300 minus 240 equals to delta T, which implies that delta T must be 60, which means it's 60 degrees or Kelvin depending upon this. Yeah, this was degrees centigrade, so it is going to be 60 degrees centigrade higher than this initial temperature, which was 20 degrees. So resultant will be 20 plus 60, which is 80 degrees centigrade. That's our required answer. So 13 is D. Fine. Great. Now let's move on to question number 14. Okay, the de Broglie wavelength of a proton is given as such, right? So here clearly we can directly do something like this. Just a minute, please. Okay, fine. Okay, so when in the intro session I said for a given, if it's a proton, sorry, where's this value? Yeah, if it's a proton, lambda can be written as 28.6 divided by root v picometers directly. So we just need to plug it in right now. Here the V is 1000 volts. So 28.6 by root over 1000, which can be written as 0.904 into 10 to the power minus 12 meters. So it's directly B. Fine. So had they written picometers, that option would have been right as well. Fine. Now question number 15. An iceberg of density this is floating in water of density this much, percentage of volume outside, not submerged. So it's going to be 1 minus n, 1 minus sigma by rho, 1 minus 900 by 1000, which is directly going to be 1 by 10. So percentage means into 100, which is nothing but 10%. So direct one liner. 15 is C. Next. So that's what I said, like the formula that I gave you. In fact, I will try my best to give you a formula sheet as well. If you know it, the moment you see a question, apply it and you'll get the answer. That's what BitSight is all about. So try to like keep this in mind. Like जितना कम टाइम हो सके उतना कम टाइम में मतलब क्वेश्चन का आंसर निकाल लेना है. That's what we are trying our best to. Fine. The total energy of an electron in first excited stage of hydrogen is about minus 3.4 eV. Its kinetic energy is, okay, I think I did not tell you this, but total energy is nothing but minus of Ke. Fine. So it's directly going to be, this is just a one liner. So kinetic energy is going to be 3.4 eV, directly D. Fine. Again, hardly this should take you 5-10 seconds. It's pretty obvious here. A common emitter amplifier has a voltage gain of this input impedance and an output impedance power gain. Okay, power gain, right? It's just going to be everything of output by input. This is going to be a power gain, any gain, power gain, voltage gain, current gain. It is going to be power, whatever it be the quantity here, that output by input. Fine. So what we want is power gain. So output power can be written as this can be written as V out into I out divided by V in into I in, right? So V out by V in can be written as voltage gain into current gain. Fine. So I naught by I पे रख देते हैं फिलहाल, ठीक है. So voltage gain is this much. We have a voltage gain and we have impedance. So I can be again written as V by R. So V naught by R naught and VI by RI. So this is again going to be VG, like voltage gain. So voltage gain squared into RI by RO. Voltage gain is 50. So 50 squared.
input resistance or impedance is 100 ohms and output is 200, so it's just going to be half of it, so 1250. It's directly going to be C. Fine. Next, the horizontal projectile range and maximum height reached. Just a minute. Fine. The horizontal range and maximum height attained by a projectile R and H respectively. If a constant horizontal acceleration A is imparted to the projectile due to wind, then its horizontal range and maximum height will be. Okay, now if we apply, this is a projectile, right? Fine. Now if we apply an acceleration in this direction, in the vertical direction there will be no change, so H max will remain the same as H. Only change will come in terms of R. And acceleration be it in this direction will have no issues. And here acceleration is provided in this direction, so R is definitely going to be R plus something. Now we just have to find that. So these options are totally gone. It's going to be H. Now it's either 2H or single H, right? So we'll have to calculate that. So just use this, like initially it was U, this is U sin theta, and this is U cos theta. Now time of flight is twice U sin theta by G. So R, like R dash, will be S equals to ut plus half at squared, U cos theta t plus half A. Acceleration is G by 4, so plug it in, half into G by 4 into t squared, 4U squared sin squared theta divided by G squared. Fine. So this is going to give you your value. So it's going to be something like twice U squared sin theta cos theta by G plus GU squared sin squared theta by twice G here. So U squared by G twice sin theta cos theta plus sin squared theta divided by 2. So let's simplify it further. So we are somewhere here right now, and we will have to figure it out, right? So this is original R. Just a minute, huh? So oh, okay, fine. Now look at this. If we observe, no need to go here, we could just directly observe from this one. Twice U square sin theta cos theta by G, this is nothing but R. U square sin square theta by twice G is nothing but your H, like of the initial one. H equals to U squared sin square theta by twice G. If we consider a simple projectile where there is no acceleration in horizontal component, H is given by this and R is given by theta by G. So isn't it in this form? So clearly we can directly substitute it as R plus H. So your answer is going to be D here. Fine. Cool. Now like just in case, just a minute, huh? Okay, I'll be telling this question 1 second. Okay. Now see, the thing is here there is an horizontal acceleration given, so there will be no change in the vertical component, so our H will still remain H. All we have to do is find our range, right? Now R dash again can be written as, like, whatever will be the time of flight. Initially it was just U cos theta, now it's going to be U cos theta plus something, like the velocity will keep on increasing because there is an acceleration of G by 4 in the horizontal direction as well. So it can be written as ut plus half A t squared. Sorry. Okay, this can be written as U squared sin squared theta divided by twice T. Okay, and this can be written as nothing but the original R, and this can be written as the original H. So this net result R dash can be written as R plus H. So that's our answer. Done. Next, a balloon is filled at 27 degrees centigrade in this much. At 3, this is the volume of helium will be. Since the balloon is filled and nothing else is done, which this means the number of moles inside the balloon remains constant. So we will just apply ideal gas equation, PV equals to nRT. nR is constant here, so PV by T also must be constant. So P1 V1 by T1 must be PV P2 V2 by T2. This can basically be written as something like this. Where is it? Yeah, original P1 is 1 atm, V1 is 500 and temperature is 300. P2, original P2 is T2 can be written as 270, P2 can be written as half, and V2 is what we seek, right? So this can be written as 540 here, and this can be written as 5 by 3. So this implies that V2 equals to 540 into 5 by 3, 180 into 5, which is 900. So 900 cubic meters is an option. So now let's start solving question 20. The ratio of intensity at the center of a bright fringe to the intensity at a point distance 1/4 of the distance between two successive bright fringes. So this is going to be a bright fringe, this is going to be a bright fringe. So the distance between them, whatever is the distance, 1/4 of it, right? So the distance between two bright fringes given by lambda d by d, right? It's 1/4 of it, so lambda by 4. Now suppose we're talking about the position of a bright fringe. It is written as n lambda d by d, where this is the path difference, right? So in this case our path difference is lambda by 4. Now path difference by phase difference can be written as lambda by twice pi, or the other way around as well, like reciprocal will लिख सकते हैं. So in this case lambda by 4 by d phi equals to lambda by twice pi. So in that case d phi must be equal to pi by 2, right? So this is our phase difference right now. So at the center intensity is given by this much, but since at the central bright fringe phi is 0, so automatically it becomes I naught at the center. Now I at this given position is given by 4 I naught cos squared phi by 2. Phi here is pi by 2, the whole thing becomes pi by 4, cos squared is half of it, so twice I naught. So the ratio they asked is bright fringe is to this point, so 4 by 2, which is 2. So directly C. Next, in question number 21, what we have is this. Okay, a rectangular block of mass m and area of cross section A floats in liquid. Find its given vertical displacement. It undergoes oscillation with the time period t. So the time period of oscillation there can be written like this. Sorry, yeah. So it is here, right? So suppose we submerge it a little further, it will experience a buoyant force equal to v rho g, that is going to be ma, fine. V is nothing but a into that x submerged, rho g by m, so it's going to be a. So your omega can be written as root over a rho g by m. Great. So what did they ask? Time period. Time period is twice by root over m by a rho g. So it is inversely proportional to root a, right? Inversely proportional to root m, wrong. Inversely proportional to 1 by root rho, सही है, and this is wrong. So here there are two right options. Choose any one, सही हो जाएगा, fine. Okay, so question 22. 3 jars are placed at the 3 vertices, fine, and force experienced by A in direction normal to BC, like in the vertical direction, right? Fine. So since it's equilateral triangle, all equal charges, force is given by this expression. It's going to be in this direction and this direction, fine. So basic vector addition, it's going to be along the bisector. This is 60s, this is 120, this is 120, so this is going to be 60. Since this is 60 as well, so net force will be along horizontal direction, and they want the component along vertical direction. Clearly, since it's totally around horizontal direction, component of vertical will be 0. Okay, so question number 23. A load of mass m from a height h falls, ठीक है? If the spring constant is k and the mass of scale pen is 0, mass m does not bounce, m2, ठीक है? So energy is going to be conserved. Let us assume m2 is x naught, fine. So if we solve it like this, directly energy conservation equation, half k x naught squared minus mg x naught. On solving, we will directly get x naught is given by mg by k plus minus mg by k root over 1 plus twice hk by mg, right? So what we want is amplitude, right? So amplitude basically means displacement from mean position. So this was the maximum displacement we observed from this height h, but once the object collides, its mean position will change. Its mean position will be given by some x dash, wherein kx dash must be equal to mg. So x dash must be equal to mg by k. So its mean position right now is at a height of mg by k, and the x naught, that maximum, that distance that we found, is somewhere like this, like mg by k plus minus something. So clearly it is given by this. Since this is the mean position, the amplitude will be given by whatever is the maximum displacement minus this. So our x naught is given by mg by k plus minus mg by k root over 1 plus twice h k by mg, and since we want the amplitude, it's going to be minus position of mean position, so minus x dash, so minus mg by k, so it is going to be mg by k root over 1 plus twice h k by mg. This is going to be our amplitude, so directly it's going to be B. Fine. Now question 24. The activity of a radioactive sample is measured as N naught counts per minute and N naught by E at t equals to 5, right? Time in minutes, activity reduces to half. So half life बस निकालनी है. So we have at t equals to 0, it is given by N naught e to the power minus lambda t. So at t equals to 5, it is given by N naught by E lambda 5. So from here we can clearly say that e to the power minus 1 is e to the power minus lambda 5. So lambda must be equal to 1 by 5. What we want is half-life period. So t half is given by ln2 by lambda. So ln2 by 1 by 5, which is 5 ln2 in terms of minutes. So 5 ln2, option D. Fine. Great. Now a planar convex lens fits exactly into a planar concave lens. So it's somewhat like this, but it fits exactly, like there's nothing in between. So it's kind of like this. Okay, their surfaces are parallel to each other. If lenses are made of different materials of refractive indices mu1 and mu2, and r is the radius of curvature, then the focal length of a combination is direct lens maker's formula. Let us assume mu1, mu2, this is air, right? So mu is 1. So directly here we could write that the focal length is given by mu2 minus mu1 divided by minus r. That's it. Fine. So the focal length can be written as r by mu1 minus mu2, wherever that is. So option C directly. Fine.
So if I didn't tell you this lens maker's formula earlier, so this is the thing. Suppose we have something like this,
u1 mu2 1. Okay. Generally here not necessarily it will be plane. Here there can be some kind of a radius as well, right? So it is written like this: 1 by f mu1 minus 1 by whatever is the r here, as per new Cartesian sign convention, that is NCSC thing. Fine. Plus mu2 minus mu1 by, this is r1, r1, r2, r3. Fine. Plus 1 minus mu2 by r3. This is basically going to be your lens maker's formula for lenses like this. Now you could continue, like next it would be 1 minus mu2 if there is some kind of mu4, so mu4 minus mu1 by r, and whatever it is, and r should be written as per as NCSC. Fine. So in our case 1 by f is mu1 minus 1 by r1. Since it's planar concave, so focal length is infinity, so this becomes 0, plus mu2 minus mu1 by r2. R2 is in this direction, so magnitude can be written as minus r2, plus again r3 is infinity, so it becomes 0. So for us f is directly r divided by mu1 minus mu2. So option C. Fine. I converted this into a simple circuit, like 1 ohm here, and made this a 5 volt battery source. Fine. So the whole thing is 5 ohms, current is 1 ampere. If current is 1 ampere, voltage drop will be 4 volt. Since there is no current through this in steady state and it acts like an open circuit, so this 4 volt will be equally distributed, so 2 volt across each capacitor. So for a capacitor, Q equals to CV. C is given by 3 10 to minus 6 and volt is 2, so 6 microcoulombs. So C, 26 C. Fine. So question 27. Fine. We have a block A of mass, this is given, and it rests on another block B of mass something, and is tied to a wall as shown in figure. The coefficient of friction between A and B is this much. Okay. Minimum force required. Fine. So let us assume that the maximum force here is T. So maximum friction will be mu mg 0.2, so 200 newtons approx. Fine. So that 200 newton will be applied here as well due to friction. This F will have to counteract this frictional force as well. So that is again mu mg, where here m is total m. Initially here it was just 100, but for this one it will be 300. So 300 into 3, so 900. So 900 newton. So the minimum force required must be greater than equal to 1100. So it should be 1100 newton. See, done. Next, a uniform rod of length L and mass m is free to rotate in a vertical plane about A. The rod initially in horizontal position is released. The initial angular acceleration of the rod is, okay, fine. So this is a rod. Okay. We will have to find the initial angular acceleration. So simple सी बात है, just calculate, talk about any point हो जाएगा. So we are going to calculate about this. This is your center of mass, mg होगा. There is nothing else. So let's calculate about this point top.
tau equals to I alpha, we know that, and tau again is given by r cross f, है ना? So for us it's going to be perpendicular, so just magnitude will do. R is L by 2, F is mg, I is ml squared by 3 since moment of inertia about end is ml squared by 3, and alpha, right? So cancel m, cancel L, so we have 3g by 2L equals to alpha, and that's our direct answer. A, done. See, it's direct to the point. There is nothing, no manipulation, nothing. Just directly apply concept, you'll get the answers. So that's what we're trying to do here. Now, question number 29. The monochromatic radiation of wavelength lambda is incident on a hydrogen sample in ground state. Find fraction of light is absorbed and emits radiations of 6 wavelengths. Now, suppose you are in state n, right? Total number of radiation lines is given by n into n minus 1 by 2. Fine. Now, if we have 6 lines coming up, so n into n minus 1 must be equal to, like by 2 must be equal to 6, and n minus 1 must be 12. So clearly 3 into 4 we know that, so n must be 4, right? So our wavelength, like the excited state n must be 4, so it should be in the third excited state. Fine. So now what we want to do is that we have to find the wavelength that it absorbs so that it is able to do that. So maximum wavelength possible should be should provide that much of energy that provides minimum energy of n equals to 1 to n equals to 4, right? Now okay, fine, so let's do it this way. We know 13.6 1 minus 1 by 16, this is actually going to be the energy difference, can be written as hc by lambda. Fine. Now lambda can be written as, and this is in EV, right? So we need to convert it to SI, so 1.6 in 10 to the power minus 19. So lambda can be written as hc divided by 15 by 16, 13.6, 1.6, 10 to the power minus 19. On solving it, we directly get the answer coming out to be something around 97.5, 10 to the power 9. So clearly the answer will be A. Fine. Directly just calculate it, you'll get the answer. So that's pretty much it. Next. A coil in the shape of an equilateral triangle of side L is suspended in between the pole pieces of a permanent magnet such that B is in the plane of the coil. If due to a current I in the triangle, a torque tau rests on it, the side L of the triangle is. Okay. So here we have a coil and there is a B, right? Now tau is, as I already mentioned, it's given by an IBA sin theta. Here since they are perpendicular, like since B is in the plane of the coil, so area vector will be perpendicular, so sin theta will be 1, and n here I guess is just 1 since a single loop, so it's just IBA. Now I is given, B is given, and A means area through which the field passes, that is given by root 3 by 4 into L squared, where L is side of the equilateral triangle. This is basic. Fine. So this can be written as tau by IB 4 by root 3. This is given by L squared, so what we want is L. So L is given by 2 tau by root 3 IB raised to the power half, whichever option satisfies, to this one. So I guess option A. Fine. Okay, so question number 31. Work done increasing the size of a soap bubble. Fine. So work done will basically be the difference in surface energies, and the intersection I gave you the formula, so directly just apply it. 8 pi into T R2 squared minus R1 squared. So 8 pi 3 by 100 25 minus 9 into 10 to the power minus 4 since it's given in centimeters, and this will give us 0.4 pi millijoules. So that's the answer. Option A pi भी होगा, so option C is your answer. Fine. Done. So now the velocity of a projectile at the initial point A is this much. Its velocity in meter per second point B is, well, since it has already completed the entire path, it's going to be, the magnitude is going to be the same, while direction is just going to be mirrored. So x component remains the same. So initially it was twice I and thrice j. So twice I remains the same, and this becomes minus 3j. So twice I minus 3j direct. Fine. This question shouldn't take more than 10 seconds. So try to capitalize on this. Next, in the current shown, heat produced in 5 ohm resistor is 10 calorie per second. Heat produced in 4 ohm will be. Okay. Now let us assume I is the current through this branch. Let it be I. Fine. So here there will be some kind of I dash. Now we know for a branching like this, I by I dash will be given by R dash by I, right?
r dash is basically 10 and this is 5, so 2. So I dash is going to be I by 2. We have this much in our hands. Now since this is parallel combination, we can directly see this. Okay, so we have right now I dash equals to I by 2. Fine. Okay, great. Now for the heat produced in case of the 5 ohm will be I squared R. Fine. So that is given by 10, and what we want is I squared I dash squared into 4, right? It can be written as I squared, like I dash can be written as I by 2, right? So we could write it something like this, which is I squared. Wait, let's write it properly a little bit. Yeah, for this one, heat produced is given by I squared into R, which is 10 calories. So I squared can be written as 2, whatever is the unit. Fine. We just consider the magnitude. So for the 4 ohm resistance, it's going to be I dash squared into 4. I dash is I by 2, so I squared by 4 into 4, which is this I squared. I squared's magnitude is 2, so the answer is going to be 2 calories. So directly, this is our answer. Next. Okay, so question number 34. An alpha particle after passing through a potential difference of V volt collides with the nucleus. Atomic number is Z, distance of closest approach. Distance of closest approach basically means that alpha particle will come and it will reverse its direction of path. So this point where it reverses direction is referred, like at that point the distance between the center and this point is referred to as the distance of closest approach, or not suppose. Now initially it had just kinetic energy, let us assume capital K the alpha particle had, and nothing else had energy. In the final moment at this point, neither have kinetic energy, but there is just electrostatic potential energy, which is given by K ZE into charge of alpha particle. Alpha particle's charge is twice E, so twice E divided by R naught. Fine. Potential का formula ऐसा होता है ना, K Q1 Q2 divided by R. Just applied that directly. Where K is this, that 9 into 10 to the power 9 constant, right? Coulomb's constant, electrostatic law. So that constant होता है. Okay, so yeah, if you plug it in here, we'll directly get it something like this, that twice Z K E squared by R naught must be K. So R naught must be twice Z K E squared by capital K. K is basically kinetic energy. Now twice Z, K can be written as 9 into 10 to the power 9 E squared by kinetic energy. Kinetic energy is written by charge into volt, right? Volt is V. The charge for alpha particle is twice E. So this can be written like this: 9 into 10 to the power 9, 1.6 10 to the power minus 19 into Z by V in terms of meters, or not. This can be written as 14.4 into 10 to the power minus 10 into Z by V meters. So 14.4 into Z by V angstrom. That is basically your R naught. Now let's check. Well, units are kharab, so let us assume that this is angstrom. So this is basically going to be answer 14.4 Z by V. Sorry, Z by V. So let this be your angstrom. So this is going to be answer 14.4 Z by V angstrom. Done. Okay, so question number 35. Two simple pendulums of lengths are given small displacements in the same direction at the same time. When they come again together, then the pendulum of shorter length has completed n oscillations. So n is, so time period देखते हैं. Time period is twice by root over L by G. So if initial का है t, directly proportional to root 5, t dash will be directly proportional to root 20, which is 2 root 5. So t dash is basically 2t. Fine. So यहाँ पे तो obvious हो गया. Let us assume that shorter length का time period जो है, it will be less, so it will its n will be greater, right? So let us assume that it complete n1 and n2, right? So shorter one does n1 and longer one does n2. Now since shorter one will have shorter time period, so it will complete more number of oscillations. So n1 must be greater than n2. इतना तो पता ही होगा मैं, ठीक है? Now n1 into t1 must be equal to n2 into t2, since at the same time they come back together again. So n1 by n2 can be written as t2 by t1, which is nothing but 2. Fine. So n1 by n2 must be equal to 2, and it should be in the simplest whole number ratio, so 2 by 1. The question is, the shorter length will have completed, since n1 is the shorter length, it will have completed 2 oscillations. Fine. Done. Next, 36. A parallel plate capacitor with air between the plates has a capacitance of 9 picofarad. So let us assume epsilon naught A by D equals to 9 picofarad. Fine. Let us denote it by C. Now the separation between the plates and everything is given, is now filled with two dielectrics, thickness, and this much is given. Okay. So what they're saying is that, just a minute. Okay. So what they're saying is that now thickness d by 3 and 2d by 3, right? Here we'll be having k1 is 3 and here we'll be having k2 is 6. So what we want is capacitance now. Now we can treat them as two different capacitors in series, right? So its capacitance C1 can be written as epsilon naught A, since A remains constant, divided by d by 3. And since it's fully filled with k, we can write this 3 here as well. Like it's going to be k here, for us in this case it's 3. So 9 into epsilon naught A by d. For C2 it's going to be 6 into epsilon naught A by 2d by 3. So again it's going to be 9 epsilon naught A by d. Now since two capacitors are in series, the net capacitance is going to be C1 by 2. So 4.5 into epsilon naught A by d. Again we have epsilon naught A by d given to be 9 picofarads. So we just substitute it, 9 picofarads. So 36, 40, 40.5 picofarads. So this is our resultant capacitance of the capacitor, 40.5 picofarads. Next, a particle moving around x-axis has an acceleration of f at time t given by f equals to f naught, like this, and this is the expression given. The particle at t equals to 0 and what they're trying to say is that the particle is at rest at t equals to 0, and at the instant when f equals to 0 we have to find the velocity x, fine, vx, sorry. So for that, let us do something like this. Acceleration, right? So dv by dt is given by f naught 1 minus t by t. So we just have to integrate it right now. F naught t minus f naught t squared by twice t. Fine. It's going to be plus c, but since at t, what they tried to say was at t equals to 0, it is at rest. So if you put t equals to 0, v should be 0. So c is also 0. Fine. This is a velocity function. So what we have to find is that at the instant when f is 0, the f is 0 when 1 minus t by t equals to 0. So t must be equal to t. Fine. So at that case, v is going to be f naught t minus f naught t by 2, which is f naught t by 2. So that's going to be your vx. So d directly, fine. 37 is d. Next, question number 38. A geostationary satellite orbits around the earth in a circular orbit of 36,000 kilometers. Then the time period of a sky satellite orbiting a few hundred kilometers above the earth's surface, the radius is 6400 kilometer, will be approximately how much? Okay, so we'll have to calculate that now. Okay, now we must be familiar with Kepler's law of satellites or orbiting bodies, in which case r cube by t squared is constant. Fine. So all we have to do is just apply that right now. R cube by t squared must be equal to r dash cube by t dash squared. What is your r cube here? 36,000 in kilometers. We'll keep them in kilometers. Cube divided by t squared. Now since it's geostationary satellite, your time period is going to be 24 hours. Equals r dash cubed. What is your r dash cube? A few hundred kilometers. So it's going to be 6400 plus minus something. So with respect to this 36,000, it's inconsequential. So we'll just keep it that way. Fine. So let's keep it as h right now, and later we'll approximate it. Divided by some t dash squared. Fine. So t dash can be written as 6400 plus h divided by 36,000 raised to the power 3 by 2 into 24, right? So if we consider h to be 0, like h is slightly greater, right? It's like a few hundred kilometers. So it's going to be plus minus 100 or something, that sort. So approximately same. So t dash will be greater than 6400 by 3600, this much, 3 by 2 into 24. So it is going to be greater than, if you plug in the values here, it's going to come out to be 1.8. So since t dash is going to be slightly greater than this, like if we consider h to be few hundred kilometers, it won't be a major difference, just slightly 0.1 or 0.2. So in this case, t dash will come out to be closest to 1.8 hours, which is 2, like slightly higher than that, closest value is 2. So that's it. Next 39, right? ठीक है. So question number 39. Okay, a transverse wave propagate. Wait, let me clean this up first. Been over an hour. Okay, so question number 39. A transverse wave propagating on a stretched string of linear density is represented by this equation. Tension is, well, for tension we need to find velocity, root over t by nu, right? And we know that omega equals to kv, so we can be written as omega by k. So omega by k must be equal to root over t by mu. So omega squared by k squared into mu must be equal to your tension, right? What is your mu here? 3 into 10 to the power minus 4. What is your omega here? Kx omega. This is kx and this is omega t, right? So your k is going to be 1.5, omega is 60. So omega is 60 and k is 1.5. So 1.5 can be written as 3 by 2 as well. So we could just convert it to 40 squared. So 16 10 minus 2 into 3. So 0.48 Newton. So option B. Fine. So yeah, this was pretty direct. Now question number 40. I guess this is the last question, right? Fine. So let's see. Now since I was explaining, it took me so long to come here, but in general, if you basically solve it, these are more or less max to max 3-liners with a large number of 1-liner questions. So if you are practiced enough, you can solve it within 40-45 minutes. So try to get that speed. Fine. Now the last question, and then we'll be over with this. And I think there's a typo here as well. Okay, so we have at this point we would like to calculate the magnetic field. Now due to a ring, it is going to be mu naught I divided by twice r. Now since it's 90 by 360 is going to be 1/4. So this, due to this arc at this point B, at this point O, the value of B will be 1/4 of that due to an entire circle. So mu naught I divided by 8r is due to this arc. Fine. So arc. Now due to this line, we let us say this is the right line, and then we'll have the left line as well, right? So it's mu naught I divided by 4 pi d sine theta 1 plus sine theta 2, right? But the thing is here, this d, so this is 45 degrees, this will also be 45 degrees, this is r, so your distance is going to be r by root 2. So instead of r, we will have to write r by root 2, fine? And we have sine theta 1 plus sine theta 2. Now for the right one, sine theta 1 is going to be minus pi by 4, so it's going to be minus 1 by root 2, and for theta 2 it's going to be 90, so it's going to be 1. And for BL it's going to be again the same thing, I divided by 4 pi r by root 2. Okay, now yeah, so again for you it's going to be in the left hand direction, theta 1, so it's again going to be minus 1 by root 2, and theta 2 is going to be again positive 90, so it's plus 1. Fine. So your net field is going to be given by mu naught I by 8r plus mu naught I, and so this is basically the same value, right? So twice into this, 4 pi r by root 2, 1 minus 1 by root 2, and they want it in terms of mu naught I by 4 pi terms, right? So let's do that then. Mu naught I by r 1 by 8 plus root 2 by 2 pi minus root 2 by twice pi and 1 by root 2, so it's just going to be 1 of it. Okay, and this can be considered to be root 2 pi. Okay, mu naught I divided by r, and we need 4 pi out, right? So 4 pi, if you put 4 pi there, it's going to be pi by 2, again 4 pi, so 4, so it's going to be 2 root 2, 4 pi will be 2. Fine. And we want it to be either in terms of pi or pi by 4. If we consider it to be in terms of pi by 4, we will have to like multiply and divide by 2. So let's do it this way: mu naught by 4 pi twice I by r, pi by 4 plus root 2 minus 1. So okay, here there was a typo. These options have minus 1 in them as well. Okay, so if we consider them right now, like it will be somewhat like this. Yeah, fine. So now if we consider mu naught by 4 pi twice I by r root 2 plus pi by 4 minus 1, it matches with option B. So that's your answer. Fine. So basically this is how we were supposed to attempt the paper. Hope you basically understood something. If you didn't catch any of the formulas, I have explained them in the intro section, so give it a rewind and try to understand what I've done. And if still you have doubts, please comment below and let me know. Fine. I hope I've helped you, and that's all from me today. Thank you. See ya.